This is card prototyping in Cocktail. I'm Dan. I've created this tool, and a few other people have started using it to make cards for their tabletop games. So I'm going to show you guys basically how to do the prototyping for cards using the tool. Are we all ready to go?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean,
Okay, cool.
some people may join a few minutes late or so, but yeah, I think we can start.
For
We
sure.
already got the first question for you.
Oh, wow.
Why the name Cocktail? From Jared.
Yeah, so the idea behind the name Cocktail was basically you're going to be using this tool to mix art, design, and data together. And all three of those things within the tool are, very much at the forefront. So it's not just like an art tool, because there's definitely a very strong link to the data, and that gives you the ability to generate cards and other things in sort of a batch way that's very easy. So that was the idea. It's a composition tool, So that's why Cocktail. So something like, a name like Blender or something like that, you're mixing things together, right? Kind of a similar idea, I guess, for this. Okay, so I see someone's typing, but I'm going to go ahead and continue on a little bit. So here, I'm just going to share with you this Google Sheet. This is some data that I just put together this morning. And I talked to a bunch of people on the server and asked them if I could just use, a little bit of their information so I could generate some simple cards based on, their name and their avatar and stuff like that. So that's what I'm going to use just for this demo. And you can see here, I've got these columns ID, which is just a unique identifier. It really could be anything, but it has to be unique in order for the cards to get their, basically in order to reference the cards inside the tool, they just each one needs a unique identifier. There's the name of the person, which we're going to use in two different ways in the tool. I just did this nickname in here because I saw a couple people had, their name in the server, and then they have, their nickname as well. Then there's group, which I just took, people who are in the different mastermind groups. This is an icon, which is really just like the avatar for everybody. This is an image. I just took the Nerdlab image, and I'm going to use this to link in the tool for the cards. And then the description was mostly just said in the introduction channel. So I'm going to throw something together really quick for you guys so you can see what that looks like.
And I guess you have to give share permissions to that spreadsheet, right?
Yeah, I could. I really just put it together for this demo, so it's not meant to be something that anybody else would use necessarily.
But I mean for your tool, for Cocktail to access
the
data.
We will see that. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a project and connect to this, and that'll be one of the early things that we do. So you'll be able to see how that works. So if I go into Cocktail, I'm just going to go ahead and create a new project. And the project name is just going to be Nerdlab. And then I already have a folder set up on my desktop called Nerdlab. So I'm just going to use that. And so that's going to create a new project. It's empty other than the project file. But if I look in the Nerdlab folder, you'll see here it created this project file just now. And there's also this art folder, which I added here earlier, which is going to have, some assets that we're going to use when we're creating the cards. And I'm also going to create a new layout. And when you create a layout, you basically have, just an empty, just an empty layout here. There's nothing in it. The current width is in pixels, 1000 by 1000 pixels. I'm going to go ahead and change the base unit to inches just to make it easier for people. And then I'm going to set the width and the height here to 2.5 by 3.5, typical poker card size, I believe. And this isn't saved yet, so we're just creating a layout, and then we're going to add some stuff to it. Then eventually we'll save it, and then we'll link it to the stuff in the data source. So first thing we're going to do here, this is the rectangle tool. I'm just going to go ahead and draw a rectangle. I'm going to just fill up this. The fill for this, I'm just going to make it just white like this. So just pull up this color picker, turn the alpha up all the way and choose white for the fill. I'm going to, turn the stroke off. I'm just going to make it transparent and then set the stroke thickness to 0. So there's no stroke. It's just a blank white rectangle. Then I'm going to add some text here. So I'm going to put some text at the top here. Make this change the font size here. We can change the font and the font size, and you can set the font weight and all this kind of stuff as well for this. I'm just going to change this text to name temporarily, and I'm going to align this in the center. All right, and you can see over here we have, these are our layers. So the bottom layer is rectangle 0. On top of that, we've got this text. I'm going to go ahead and add an additional text at the bottom here. I'm going to set this to size 8. And this is the select tool here, this first one. So I can click in here and select any of these things, select the rectangle in the background, or select this, select that. Over here, you can turn the visibility on and off. You can also lock so that you can't click on something. So if something was on top of another thing, you'd be able to click something behind it, for instance. Let me turn that off. And then I'm going to add an image. It's kind of like the main image of the card, for instance. Yeah. And I'm just going to select from the art folder here the Nerdlab image. And so this is going to be sort of the main image for all the cards by default. Then the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and while I'm doing this, just going to stop here and go ahead and add that data source that we were going to put in. So I'm going to go back and forth a little bit between these two things. So adding a data source is here on this little link plus at the top, or under File, Add Data Source. So I'm just going to click that. And then I'm going to go back to the sheet really quick, and I'm just going to get the full address of this. It's going to parse this and get at the Google Sheet ID, and it's going to use that as the link data. So I just hit OK here. And here's the thing where I'm allowing it to access. So I'm going to say I'm going to use this one, and I'm going to allow and receive the verification code. So that's OK. I close that. Now we can see in here we've got a Google Sheets 0. We can rename this to something else if we want to. And it gives us the ability then to select the properties as the column name. So we need an ID just so we can reference the card within the tool. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to select the name. And then this gives you all the names here. And then I'm also going to select the layout as layout 0, which is this one here that we're creating. So if I go in here and I click on any of these, I can now see that this is actually the layout that we were creating. And all that stuff is in there. But we don't have anything linked to the data. So what we'll do is I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to select the name, for instance. And the way the linking works is there's a little button here next to the property. All these properties can be linked in some way. But if I go over here next to this text, and right now the default is name, and I click this, I can do a direct link. It gives me this drop down, and I can select the column that's going to be linked to. So it's just going to be linked to name. That's the actual column name. And if I go back to Google Sheets 0 and I click here on any of these, you'll see the name is actually getting replaced with the proper one for that person, for this card, right? And the same thing you can do for the description as well. I can do a direct link, for instance, to description, which is a column in the spreadsheet. And if I go back to the Google Sheets, then we get everybody's description, their introduction that they put on the server. Yep. And here you can see Marvin actually bolded some of these things for you. So if I look at the data, I can see here, it uses something similar to HTML, like some very simple tags and stuff. So you can bold or italic or underline. There's even support in here for putting icons in line with text and doing tables and stuff like that as well. So that's all possible functionality. Let's take a look at some of these questions. So does this allow adding data categories live on fly or still require CSV file? Thomas is asking. There's no CSV file. This is linking directly to the Google Sheets file, obviously. If I were to go to the Google Sheets page here, and I were going to say add, let's just take somebody's information here, like let's say Mount Art. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to insert one here. I'm going to add another one, and let's just say I added a new person called Best, right? This is saved obviously in Google Sheets automatically. If I go back here, it doesn't automatically update right away, but if I right click on the sheet and I refresh it, you can see test shows up. So it's semi-live with the data. So it just requires you to do like a right click and refresh it so that it gets added. Can you add conditional images? Yeah, I think I can show you how that works. Is there a way to show the center of the layout? Currently there's not. Like I'm planning to add a ruler later on. This is something that's still in development, but this is pretty far along. So I'm planning to add like some ruler stuff and add some additional information here so you can see the positioning of the items and stuff more easily. But that's not currently there. And yeah, ASIB20 said conditional images is a yes. Yeah, I'm going to get to that. And dominant existing workflows use data merge that draws from CSV file for variable data fields. Does this do it live? Can you add columns as well? You can. There is no data merge. It's just, it's basically live. You just have to say refresh the data source, and it reloads everything from the data source at that time. So as long as it was updated, you'll get to see the result just by refreshing it. So, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and just add a few more things in this layout so it's a little bit more interesting. So for the image, obviously we also had an image column as well, so I'll link that. And then I'm going to do basically going to create another image. I'm just going to put it sort of in this upper corner here. And that's going to be the, let's say, the icon, like this sort of thing. And then I'm going to link that to the icon as well. All right. And then you'll see here, obviously, that'll all be updated, right? So Jared was the only one that supplied me with an extra image for his portrait here, which is exactly the same as this, but I threw that in there just for fun. But everyone else just has the Nerdlab image. And you can see here, kind of looks better with these, circular images. So just to show you something that's pretty cool with that, if I select this image here, there's an opacity mask here where you can select a lot of different options for an opacity mask. If I just select image, and then I'm going to select Marvin's image here, I'm just going to use that as an opacity mask, and I'm going to change the tiling and stretching options here so it goes right over top of it. So everybody gets like kind of this rounded image, which is cool. And I'm going to show you guys another thing. Let's do some text. Actually, let's do another rectangle here. I'm just going to put a rectangle here. It's drawn on top of this, so I'm going to move this so it's behind here. And then I'm going to add some text. And this text is going to be group. And the font size is going to be like 10. And I'm going to select this, and I'm going to rotate that. It's like, it's 269. I'm going to make it 270 exactly. 270. I'm going to drag that in here like this and zoom out so I can resize this a little bit right here. And I'm going to let's do right aligned. And so I've got this sort of rectangle here. I've got this rotated group text. I am also going to make a group. And there's really nothing special about a group. It just has this enabled thing. I'm going to add the text to the group. And I'm going to add that rectangle to the group. I'll move that image again. And so you see here I have this group 0, which contains the rectangle and this text. And what I'm going to do is for this entire group, I'm going to do a mapping to the group. And I'm going to, if it's none, I'm going to disable it. So this sort of turns the thing off when it does the export or when it's generating it. And so if I go back here, if I look at mine, then there's no group. If I look at the other ones, it's all in there. And of course, if I go into this text here and I link it to group, you can see how that works. So Mastermind 4, Mastermind 4, Mastermind 3, etc. All of these kind of things. And the last thing I want to show you guys, or one of the last things before we kind of go over more questions, are just the ability to, if I've got this rectangle, I can change the stroke. I can map that based on, I'm going to use the group again, and I'm going to add a few things. I'm going to do Mastermind 3, Mastermind 1, Mastermind 4, and I'm just going to pick a color for each one of those. I'm going to go ahead and save this color. And if I click this, I have these kind of color harmonies down here. I'm going to pick a different color in the same color harmony. You can expand this so you can see it better. I'm going to go ahead and do this again. This one, and then I'm going to pick this green. And so you can see here, if the group is any of these, then I'm going to fill with those colors instead. So you can see kind of how that works as well. And you can do that mapping with images. You can do it with the positioning, like any of these properties here that you see can actually be mapped based on a value in the spreadsheet. And so you can use those, basically to do almost anything. Let me go ahead and look at if there's any other questions. So is there a way to do subcategories of data, or is the first line of the database the only one used for categorization? So it's based on the column. The very first row in each column is the header, and it uses that as the thing that it links to. So I'm not sure exactly how you would do subcategories exactly. There are plans later on to do something with the additional sheets, where you could do additional sheets where you could maybe do, well, the plan is to do localization in additional sheets, and you can override the main sheet with specific text for localized export, whatever. So how is rotation handled? So I just showed you there how the rotation works. There's a little arrow at the top here, so you can rotate kind of any way you like. And there's also, it's a property over here, so you can set the rotation to an exact value that you want to use. So that's how that works. And of course, like everything else, rotation can be mapped to a value in the spreadsheet as well. Yeah, I think that I'll just show you one more thing before we kind of wrap this up, probably. Is there's this additional thing called a set. And a set basically gives you all of the different elements, all the different cards in this case, and you can add you can add as many of those elements or as few of those elements to a set that you want. And this is how you can build a deck. So in this case, I've added 5 of myself and 1 of everybody else. So the deck will contain 5 copies of me. And you can use that as your to export or print from here as well. Someone asks, how would you add a border to the card and or around a section of text? So, I mean, very easily, depending on what kind of border you wanted to make. I mean, here you saw, I basically just used a rectangle to make a border, but you can change the stroke of these. You can round the corners of these. Let's see. So, kind of however you would want to do, and you can fill these rectangles actually with images if you wanted to. So if I wanted to have a fill that wasn't a solid color but was actually an image or an SVG or some kind of a gradient, whatever. Let's say I picked image. I don't have a lot of images to choose here, but I'll just say I'll pick this gray one, right? You can see it would fill, and it actually does a tiling as well for that, and you can set the kind of tiling it does. So you can have no tiling, or you can have you can do like a uniform to fill type of thing. You can do tile, so it does this, whatever. So trim marks. So what you could do, actually there are, when you print, there is an option to do trim marks, although they're kind of in line with the images now. So I can show you how that looks. Actually, let me just undo this because it looks weird. going to hit the undo button, undo key, go back. Go back to 0. FF. Oh. Pick white. Oh, actually, it was 0. All right. And the stroke. Let's keep that at 3. Okay. So if you actually go into the set and then you were going to, let's say, export, let's say print. You can do a print and you can do, it supports duplex printing. So you can actually set the backs of the cards as well. And it will line those up in the printing process. And then you can draw the cut lines. I'm going to show you like where you would cut it. And you can add some additional spacing in between if you wanted to for some reason. And then you just hit OK and just do print to PDF, for instance. And then it would be printing. It would print this. OK, bleeds. I'll get to that in a second. And then let's just go up to the main folder here, and let's just call this test 1. Save that. It finished doing the printing. If I go to that folder, let's see, where's my, here we go. It created test 1. And in here you can see what got printed, what was created right here. And you'll see here that these are kind of the cut lines here. So it shows you a little, gives you a hint as to where you would cut it, basically. All right. And then if you wanted to do bleeds, you would include that in the layout. So, in here in the layout, when you created it, you basically create a layer, which would be a rectangle. Let me just go ahead and do that real quick. So let's say you had like an area where you said, well, I want this to be kind of the bleed area, and you just measure it by whatever measurement you wanted to use. Make this a little bit bigger so I can see it. And expand this out a little bit. And you might use this as like make this stroke like a red or something, so it's obvious. So you might say, okay, now this is the area this is a safe area, for instance, that you don't want to draw anything outside of. And then what you can do is in this rectangle, you just disable it. That way it won't be added to the export. But it would be in here so that you can see it when you're putting stuff, you're putting all of your elements together, for instance. Would you have to include trims in file as well then? AKA trim marks. So yeah, you could do, you could go ahead and make, the lines in here where you're like, okay, this is where the trim is going to be, however you wanted to do it. And, just to show, where you're going to, and you can make this card a little bit bigger than like a poker size card in that case, so that you could have the bleed and the trim all inside here. Because if you're doing, say, a texture for the background, you'd want to extend that texture into the bleed, obviously, because otherwise, if it just turned into a solid color or something, it wouldn't be correct. So just in case the printing was off by millimeter or something, you'd want to include the bleeds here, and you can add your trim marks here as I'm showing you, and you would expand your like background. Say like this back rectangle would be a texture or be solid color or a linear gradient. You would expand that into the bleed area. Yeah, so you can turn the auto-generated trim marks off. I mean, basically that was just to help people who are, a lot of people are using the tool to generate cards. maybe at home and just do prototyping, and maybe they do their own printing and everything. It would just be a quick way to add a trim mark so that you could cut it yourself. If this was something that, eventually it got to the point where you were sending it to a printer and you needed to include specific bleed and all that sort of thing, you probably want to just include that in the files themselves. Yeah.
Could you also
And maybe, yeah.
Could you also show the other export functionalities for the?
Oh yeah, sure.
tool?
So the other export functionality, and you can export from the set, or you can export from the data source as well. So if you just need one copy of everything from the data source, you could just right click and export here. And it's going to be the same for the set. It does the exact same thing, and the printing is exactly the same thing. It's just which images get generated, right? So if you do the export here, it comes up with this export options. And the only option in here is just being able to export the backs. There's no back layout defined here. But you can do in the data source, you can define a back layout. And then you could say, okay, so export, select a folder. So let's just go into lab, and we'll make a new folder here called export. And then we're going to hit OK. And it's exporting the individual images as PNGs right now. And later on, we'll probably support additional file types or other options on the export. This is just sort of temporarily what we have. But if I then go into that folder, and I can see there's an export folder added here, I can look in here and I can see that it has exported each of the cards individually. And these are, if you look at the project, it uses 300 pixels per inch. So these are, 300 pixels per inch cards. And if I actually switch this back to pixels, you could see in the layout, it's 750 by 1050 pixels as well. So that's the size that it'll actually be exported here. Let's take a look. PDF export. I think I just showed you a PDF of the file. It uses the print to PDF functionality, which seems to work pretty well. We printed this to a PDF. And this will do the backs also. So it'll do if you had like a back layout and you select and you chose to do duplex, it would print the backs on every other page also. But that's the PDF. That's basically how you would do it, or just print it to PDF. And if you zoom in here, you'll see that the quality is very good. Like the quality of the text, for instance. I mean, you're zooming in like this is 2400%. The curves are still very much rounded. There's no pixelization. Pixelation? Yeah, there's no pixelation here. This is an image that's at a certain size and resolution, so you get what you get with that. But we also do support SVG files, so that would be better as well for the icons and other things.
Do you plan to have export functionality for, let's say, tabletop simulator, as an example?
Yeah, that's something a few of the guys are doing right now, and you can talk to Mark and Claxis, I think, on how they're getting stuff exported for tabletop. I think we would like to add additional support down the road for many different types of exports. But right now, we just focused on, that what's absolutely necessary, which is, okay, we need to be able to export individual images, and we need to be able to export a file for print, with multiple cards per sheet. But yeah, we would like to add more support for tabletop exporter down the road. Yeah. Okay. Is there any other questions? Does anybody else have anything else that they'd like to ask?
I've seen you have some more questions in the chat.
Oh, okay. Okay. You say we, how big is the dev team? Currently, the dev team is myself. So, eventually, of course, I'd like to expand, to a couple of additional people to help out on things, because, with just myself doing work, I can do things pretty quickly, but we can go much deeper, obviously, if we had a large team. But that's something for down the road, for sure. Bring cocktail back up. Mm-hmm. Can it make me breakfast? No. that would be a great feature, but unfortunately, it's not bought. Maybe someday there will be robots controlling everything, and it'll interface with them, and then they'll be able to make breakfast for you. Yeah.
I would be interested in the inline icons.
Oh yeah. Okay,
I can solve that.
I can show you that really quickly. I'm still on this line. I'm drawing a bunch of lines here. Okay. All right. I can show you that really. It'll just take 1 second. If I just go into this description here, just select this, and not single 3. I want to lock that one. If I click this description here, I can right now just show you in here how the icon works. So if I do, it's a little bit of markup. So it's just icon src equals, and everything is from where the project lives. So it's art / let's say gray.png, and that'll add inline, whatever image you want, and it also works with SVGs. So that's a real thing that you can do. And obviously, if I took this and I copied it into into here, and let's say for myself, I use that. Yep, just like that. And maybe pick somebody else here, and then I'm gonna, instead of gray, I'm gonna make this yellow PNG, because I know there's a yellow and gray PNG file in the art folder. And then this is saved, so I can close this, go back here. I'm gonna refresh this so it reloads the data. And if I go to myself, you can see there's an icon that's in line with the text. Somebody else was in there too, with the yellow one. There you go. There's a yellow one for Malnord as well. And if you use, and it supports, basically all the standard image files, obviously PNG, JPEG, GIF, or GIF, whatever. And you can just insert images that way.
Okay, but I would have to really add the whole markup in my spreadsheet. Is there a way to use some kind of shortcuts for that? Like, let's say if I type in blue in brackets or so, it would add a blue mana symbol or so.
So I'm gonna say this. It would be possible to make something like that work. And the way to do it is and I'm going to go back here and I'm going to show you another demo, just another text, right? Here, I had, this is for a different demo that I've done previously. Here I've had these icons, ABC, ACBC, ABA, etc. And I used a very simple sort of script to substitute these letters for, the expanded version. So it would be very easy. And I'm thinking about, putting together something where you could define, maybe all of your icons in a sheet, and then have a very simple function that you could use to insert icons with a very simple bracket notation, cool, like you're talking about. Yeah, that would be something that anyone could actually do it if they can do a little bit of the Google script stuff, or they just can use the functions in the spread in Google Sheets. They could pretty easily put something together like that for you, so that you do it once and then you could use it everywhere. But right now that's not in there. My focus is more on making the system as flexible as possible and keeping things consistent. And so because I support similar markup for like bold and italics and tables and stuff like that, I've just kept it with that, the same kind of system. So everything uses this kind of markup system for icons and tables and text formatting stuff right now. But yes, you could implement that, or somebody could write a simple script for you that would do it. And we'll probably work on something like that down the road and release it for people if, to make it easier for them. Okay. I keep going back to first. Let's see. Oh, making donations. Okay. All right. So Jared's asking for people who like and use your product. Do you have a way to make donations? I don't right now. This is basically a kind of like a preview of the tool, and it's free. People can download and use it as much as they want. And I expect the preview will, this tool will be free for at least the next, 6 months or beyond. And beyond that, it will be something that's relatively cheap for people to use if they want to keep using. I do eventually want to turn this into something that would be, able to be monetized, just so I could keep working on it. There's a lot of work that goes into something, being able to expand my team, etc. Yeah,
that's why I'm asking, because I understand that you put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this, and it's great for everyone to be able to use it. But at some point, you got to be able to put food on the table and continue to do what you do.
Exactly.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
And so down the road, I guess by next fall, or maybe people may be able to like pre-order like the release version or something like that that'll come out next year or whatever at some point. But for right now, I'm putting this out there for people to try and see if they like it, and if they do, I hope they'll keep using it. And eventually I want to have a model that's cheap and easy for people to be able to continue using the tool, but also can support development. So that's my eventual goal with this. And yeah, it's a project of passion. This is something I'm really excited about and really interested in and want to put out there for people. But yeah, eventually, you're right. I had to put food on the table.
That's great. Dan, I got to drop off, but I do want to say great presentation. And there's still some questions, so certainly don't stop. This is why I'm leaving. But I just wanted to compliment you on your presentation, and obviously the amount of effort that you put into this. That's helping to meet a need that a lot of people have. So way to go.
I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. All right, so multiple elements to transform on card, scaling. All right, so yeah, there's a question here about, is there a way to grab multiple elements to transform them on the card, such as scaling or moving a group of elements together? That is something that we planned for in the future. There may be, I don't know if it'll be before the version 1.0, like the final release version, but there may be something where we work on multi-select, where you can move things around as a group. But there will be, I'm planning to do something more with the actual groups that are right now just, grouping things together logically and allowing you to turn off a group as an individual thing. I want to be able to create different types of groups that may actually be able to be like the parents of elements, and the whole group can be moved together. That would be something that I would like to, and I'm planning to add. Yeah. Oh, does it support basic drop shadows, etc.? Or is that planned? That is something that I can definitely. There's definitely. It's not in there right now, simply because there's just so many things to implement, and that is something that is planned and is a feature that we will get around to eventually, especially for text. Having shadows for text, etc. will definitely be in. For other things, I'll have to look into that, if there is a good way to do drop shadows for different shapes and whatnot, or like SVGs or other things like that. But for text, absolutely, it will be coming. Okay. Okay. So Thomas asked, so this is not a tool to replace image content creation designing. Yes, that is correct. It is absolutely not a image generation tool in the sense of like a Photoshop or even an Illustrator. We will add some additional tools to the layout editor part of this that will give you some of that, but it's basically a compositing tool where you're taking elements that have been created, like, a portrait of a character or some other thing that's part of your game, and the text, and putting those all together to generate either a prototype of a card or eventually the final version of a card for printing. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's see. If there's anything else that I can show you guys that's interesting. Oh, this is something I just recently added. It's not in the current version that's out there. You may have noticed when I was moving some of these elements around here, that it moves in a certain way. I just added the ability to do snapping. So there's a snap that you can define in pixels and also for the rotation. So when you're editing things in the layout, you can move it by a specific amount and it'll snap to the closest value, which I think is a really good feature that was added. That makes it easier, especially if you're working in inches or centimeters, so that you can get like 1/4 of an inch or a 1/16 of an inch, etc. Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions? The only other things that I could say that might be interesting for you guys, for these brush, you can do things like as well. So I think I undid this by accident when I was undoing some other changes I made. But so you can actually do something here where instead of using, you can also use a gradient. And the way that you can use gradients is add different color stops here. And so you could say at point 0, it's this color, and at point 1, it's another color. Let's pick a color like this. And so you can see here the gradient goes from like pink to blue. And there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with different brushes, SVG brush, image brush, radial gradient. And just like I showed you here with the this image, where it also uses an opacity mask. And in this case, it uses an image but you can use other types of brushes. Any brush can be an opacity mask. Could be a gradient, an SVG file, etc. So that's something that's also pretty cool. Yeah. Yep. So no question. It sounds like simplifying the inline text. Sure. Yeah, for sure. Being able to inline the icons easily, I think definitely makes sense. And we'll probably release something. It would be something that you would add as, like I said, like an additional function that you could use inside of Google Sheets, for instance, to actually expand, something that's a simplified version into the full version when it gets read in. So that's something that I think we can definitely work on. All right. It's about almost 4:30, 4:24 right now. Any other last minute questions?
Doesn't seem like it.
Doesn't seem like it. Okay.
Thank you very much for this great presentation. I think that's a great tool that you have created there, and I'm pretty sure it's very helpful for a lot of game designers to create their
I hope so.
card prototypes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for everybody who joined, especially anybody who stuck around to the end and got to see all the stuff. And if you guys have any questions, you can message me directly. We also have a Discord for the cocktail tool, so you can join us over there, and there's additional information there. And if you want to get a copy of the tool, either come over there or just message me, and I'll send you a link, download it, and give it a try.
Absolutely.
All right, yeah,
so
perfect.
if you have a link,
Cool.
please share it, because there might be some people that want to try
Sure.
it, me included.
Yeah.
And I will upload the recording of this session and share it with the group as well.
Okay, sounds great. Are you going to leave this Spotlight chat open
Yes.
because I'll drop the links in here directly, and people
Yes.
can come over to here and take a look and find the stuff there.
Yes, I will leave it over.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me and letting me show you this thing that I've been working on, and it's been really cool.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for doing the spotlight. I really appreciate that, man.
Okay,
Showing some
great.
cool stuff.
Hopefully it turned out good for the first one.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, you have a good one, man.
Yeah, good job.
All right, you too. Thanks a lot,
You
guys.
set the bar quite high for the next ones.
Yeah.
Okay, I hope so. I'll be interested to see who's up.
We'll see.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, fellas.
Then goodbye.
Okay.